Hey there everybody, how you doing? I am Francis and welcome to a brand new top 10 list. Today, we are going to pick my top 10 games from my favorite video game series of all time, The Legend of Zelda. This was honestly one of the hardest lists for me to put together because there are so many great Zelda games out there and only picking 10 of them and ranking them was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. Again, just like my other top 10 list, this is based on my own personal opinions and experiences playing the games, so please don't be offended if your favorites don't make my list. Also, I will be excluding any spin-off games, so no Hyrule Warriors, and definitely none of those god-awful CDI games. I will also exclude any Zelda games that I never played, which there are only 3 that I have never played. Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, and Breath of the Wild. Now, with that being said, let's get started. Number 10. The Legend of Zelda Four Swords. This game was released on the Game Boy Advance with A Link to the Past and was the first ever Legend of Zelda multiplayer game. In this game, you get to tackle the dungeons with a friend, solve puzzles together, and work together to save Princess Zelda from the new villain, Vaulty. Unfortunately, this game ranks at the bottom of my list because it requires at least 2 people to play this. And it has no single player mode, so you can only play this game if you have a friend that has a Game Boy Advance and a copy of this game. I only got to play this game once with my friend back when I was in school. I unfortunately don't have a Game Boy anymore or a friend to play this with, so sadly I have no gameplay footage to show you guys, which is why you are watching the opening. Number 9. The Legend of Zelda. Just like I mentioned in my other top 10 list, you can't make a top 10 list without including the game that started the series, and that is no exception in the Legend of Zelda series. Just like how Super Mario Bros. Had a huge impact on platformers, this game did the same thing with the adventure genre. Like any other game from this era, there wasn't much of a story in it. You go into a famous cave with the famous old man that says the famous catchphrase, you take the sword, you leave the cave, and your adventure begins right there. You look for a dungeon, you beat the boss, you find a Triforce piece, and then you look for the next dungeon. If you manage to beat this game, or you name your character Zelda, you can play a second quest, which is pretty much a hard mode of the original quest. Now, with all of that being mentioned, the reason I rank this game so low on this list is because this game is very unhelpful to finding really anything. There is no map, the clues are vague as hell. You gotta literally try to bomb every wall, push every rock, and burn every bush. A guide is pretty much required to beat this game. Which, I will admit, I did use a guide playing this game. Like, how was I supposed to figure this out on my own? Number 8. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX. Sadly, I never played the remake, but I did play the Game Boy Color version. The original Link's Awakening was Link's debut on a handheld system, and the game was a rather interesting one. First off, this game was a little bit of a Mario crossover with enemies from the Mushroom Kingdom. One of my favorite things to do with this game is take Bow Wow the Chain Chomp and watch as he eats everything in Link's path. This is also the first Zelda game that doesn't take place in Hyrule and does not feature Zelda or the Triforce. In this game, Link gets shipwrecked on Koholint Island and Link goes on a quest to awaken the Windfish to escape the island. One thing that amazed me about this game is how much this game felt so similar to the other Zelda games, given the limitations that the Game Boy had. What disappointed me about this game was the ending. What do you mean none of this happened? Number 7. Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. I always love it better when Link and Zelda are friends and not just a random princess in danger, and that's exactly what happened in Minish Cap. Link and Zelda go to Hyrule Castle Town together to celebrate the Picori Festival until a mysterious sorcerer named Vaulty broke the Picori sword and petrified Zelda, sending Link on a quest to find the Picori, also known as the Minish, to fix the sword and restore Princess Zelda. With help from a Minish named Eslo, Link can shrink to the size of a Minish to find them. Unlike other Zelda games, Link can only have 2 items equipped at a time, and a sword and shield each count as one of those items. Number 6. Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. This game was the sequel to A Link to the Past. I know, I can't believe it actually happened! What made this game unique from other Zelda games is how unlinear it was. You could tackle the dungeons in almost any order you want. Also, you don't have to worry about exploring dungeons and find the items. You can rent whatever you need from Ravio, a merchant from Larue, formerly known as the Dark World, but you can only rent 1 item at a time, so only rent what you need. One of the most interesting things about this game was Link's ability to merge with paintings. This was a sequel we've been asking for a long time. Not as good as the original, but it definitely delivered in my opinion. Number 5. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now, I know this is a bit of a controversial one. I know what you are thinking. You're thinking, what? Number 5? What is wrong with you, Francis? Well, first, calm yourself down. And secondly, I don't know what is wrong with me. And thirdly, I'll explain myself, okay? This game is, without any question, a classic. And it transitioned the Zelda series into the 3D universe. And I would even go so far as to say it had a bigger impact on the series than the original Zelda did. Hell, I would even go so far as to say that this game is better than Super Mario 64. This game did have a simple story, but this game wasn't really focusing on story, and I think that's one of the reasons why this game is so beloved. Instead of slowing the pace down by developing a complicated story, it gave you something rather simple. I think this game was kind of more of an experiment to see what they could do with new hardware, and this game was actually kind of like a template for future Zelda games, since future titles used a lot of features this game used, like multiple items to equip, a partner to annoy, to help you, and a target lock-on system. Now that I got all of that out of the way, let's go on to why I ranked it number 5. I know how much this game is beloved, and believe me, I love it too, and some people would also deem it as the greatest game of all time. While you are free to think that, I would respectfully have to disagree with that though. As great as it isn't exactly a flawless game. For example, Hyrule Field feels a little empty to me. And for a first timer, it is easy to get stuck. For example, how is a first timer supposed to know to pull out the statue Darunia is normally standing in front of, or to give Jabu Jabu a fish, or where to find Princess Ruto's bottle? Now, with all that being said, please don't get me wrong, this game is a beloved piece of my childhood as much as I'm guessing it is a piece of your childhood. And I still do enjoy it, and like I said, I would even go so far as to say that this game is better than Mario 64. But I couldn't possibly rank it any higher since I enjoy the next 4 games a lot more than this one. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I'll be honest with you guys here. When I first saw this game, I looked at it as a joke and I had no interest in ever playing it. That is until a friend convinced me to give it a try, and boy oh boy am I glad I listened to him. Sure, this game has a cartoon vibe to it, but that was part of its charm, and I overall enjoyed playing this game. This game also had an interesting story. Normally Link sets out on an adventure to save Princess Zelda. I mean, that happens later, but that's not how Link's adventure began. No, in this game, Link embarks on his journey to save his sister, who was kidnapped by a giant bird that mistaken her for the pirate Tetra. After Link gets separated from Tetra and the pirates, Link meets the King of Red Lions, which is your means of transportation in this open world. In this game, the Kingdom of Hyrule is underwater, and your adventure takes place on the Great Sea, as you sail island to island. Being honest, I wasn't a big fan of sailing or finding the Triforce pieces. This game was the perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover. Number 3. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. This game was definitely, without any question, the darkest game in the series. In 3 days' time, the moon will come crashing down and destroy Termina, and no matter where you go, the setting is gloomy and depressing. The enraged Deku King is going to execute a monkey for his daughter's disappearance. The Gorons are slowly dying a painful death as Snow Peak is stuck in a never-ending winter. The Zora lead singer of Great Bay lost her voice after the female pirates stole her eggs. Ikana Canyon is haunted by spirits of the dam. And the ranch is visited by milk-loving ghosts referred to as them. This makes you want to help everybody, only to look up and see the true face of terror. The moon is coming down, and when the final hours hit, that's when it hits that everyone and everything is going to die. Every character is stuck in a 3-day cycle, living out their final hours as Link has to rescue the 4 giants to stop the moon. My favorite part of this game is the transformation mask. As you help heal the souls of dying spirits, you can inhabit their bodies as their souls pass on. You can take the form of a Zora, a Deku Scrub, a Goron, and a Fierce Thief if you manage to get all of the masks. Unlike most Zelda games, this game is heavily loaded with side quests, and most of your time playing this game will be dedicated to said side quests. Some people may complain about reliving the same 3 days over and over and over, but I thought it was an interesting idea, and honestly it adds more to the game, because yeah, it's the same 3 days over and over, but each character in each location is doing something different, and there is also a lot of thought put into each character and what they do with their final hours to live. Also, who can forget that this game also gave birth to a creepypasta, Ben Drowned. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. I told you guys during my playthrough of this game that this was my second favorite of the series, and today I'll tell you exactly why that is. First off, unlike most games from this era, A Link to the Past actually had a story to it. It was a pretty basic story. You don't see many games from this time though with a story. This game took so many elements from the first Zelda game and made it so much better. First off, it's much easier to notice where these bumpable walls are since they are cracked. The dungeon puzzles are more advanced. Hyrule Field has a map so it's easier to get around without getting lost. And the enemy AI is a lot smarter. They actually pursue Link instead of just wandering around randomly. After you get the Master Sword, it feels like it's near the end of the game, but after you defeat Aghanim the Dark Wizard for the first time, you get taken to the Dark World and you realize there that your adventure has only just begun. This was the game that introduced me to the series, and I've been a fan ever since. And that brings us down to number 1. I think you guys already know what this is, so I'll give you guys to the count of 3 to make a guess. 3, 2, 1. That's right, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. If you watch my playthrough of this game, it should be no surprise that this made the top of my list. First off, for a GameCube game, the graphics were absolutely beautiful, and the Zelda series never had a game before that went so deep into storytelling. Every character in this game had a purpose, and each had some sort of character. For example, Colin was a coward who got bullied by the other kids until he stood in the way of a boar to save Beth. Ilia is Link's best friend who loses her memory. Even though I wasn't a fan of Ilia, I couldn't help but feel sorry for Link when he found Ilia and she can't even remember who he is. This game, in my honest opinion, had the best soundtrack in the entire series, and plus, Zan was a pretty interesting villain, cursing Midna, turning the Twilight into shadow creatures, and turning Hyrule into a world of shadows by covering it in mysterious twilight that turns the citizens into spirits and turns the chosen hero into a wolf. Speaking about Midna, she is without any doubt Link's best partner. She is not annoying like Navi and Fiwar, and she's also a big part of the story, which normally isn't the case for the helpers. They're usually just there to give Link a hand if he needs it. But she can also teleport Link and turn him into a wolf. How cool is that? And that is the end of my list. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you agree or disagree with anything I said, you can let me know in the comments down below. Like always, the comment section is a judgment-free zone where you guys can express yourselves without the fear of being judged. Also, let me know in the comments if there is any other top 10 list you would like to see me make. And I'll see you guys next time, but until then, have a nice day. Bye everybody.